Early on a crisp Saturday morning, Mr. Lee rolled open the heavy garage door to let in the soft golden light that painted long yellow stripes across the concrete floor. He adjusted his stained blue cap and walked over to a dusty red toolbox where his worn wrench lay, waiting like an old friend from countless repairs. The air smelled of motor oil and faded rubber tires, and the faint hum of distant traffic drifted through the open door. He had arrived before dawn because he loved the quiet hours when he could work without the chatter of radio DJs or the hurry of rushing customers. Just as he poured a fresh cup of strong coffee, the shrill ring of his small black phone startled him, echoing against the metal walls. It was Mrs. Thompson, the kind elderly neighbor who lived 3 houses down on Oak Street, calling to say her ancient blue sedan had stalled outside her own driveway. She explained in a trembling voice that the car would not start again after she turned into her narrow lane earlier this morning. Mr. Lee nodded even though she could not see him, and he promised to come right away without asking for any payment. He set down his coffee, grabbed his orange high-visibility vest, and climbed into his rattling old pickup truck that bore the faded letters Lee's Auto on both doors. As he drove slowly toward Mrs. Thompson's house, he thought about how she had once baked him a loaf of oatmeal bread when he had helped trim the old oak tree in her yard. Memories of her warm smile under a floppy straw hat made him feel glad to help, and he tapped his fingers on the steering wheel in time with the soft radio jazz playing from the dashboard speaker. When he arrived, he found a little sedan perched awkwardly with one wheel half on a muddy patch and the other on cracked pavement near her flower beds. Mrs. Thompson stood beside it, clutching a woven purse filled with gardening gloves and seeds for her spring planting. She greeted him with a shaky wave and a worried frown that melted into relief when he showed his tools and knelt beside the engine. He studied the engine compartment carefully, his steady hands tracing the outlines of belts and hoses as if reading a faded instruction manual. After a few moments of inspection, he identified a loose spark plug wire that had come undone during last night's rain. With a practiced click, he reattached the wire and tightened the connection so the engine would fire smoothly. Then he double-checked the oil level, topped it up from a clean jug, and wiped away a smear of grease with a soft rag. Mrs. Thompson watched in quiet wonder as he worked with calm precision that came from years of solving mechanical puzzles. Soon he turned the key in the ignition, and the engine roared to life with a smooth hum that sounded like a grateful whisper of thanks. Mrs. Thompson clapped her hands softly and pressed one to her chest, her eyes shining with gratitude as if she had just witnessed a small miracle. But Mr. Lee waved away her thanks with a gentle shake of his head and a bright, simple smile that said he expected nothing in return. He packed his tools back into the toolbox, braced himself, and opened the driver's door for Mrs. Thompson to slide into her warm seat. She patted his hand and offered him a homemade granola bar from her purse as a token of her appreciation. He accepted it with a nod and a promise that it was all part of keeping his community running smoothly. As he climbed back into his pickup, he thought again of the oak tree he had helped prune last autumn and how he had never asked her for anything either. He started the engine with ease and watched the sedan roll slowly down the street before turning onto the main road. For a moment, he felt a warm glow in his heart as though he had planted a small seed of kindness that would grow tall in her memory. Then he switched on the pickup's radio and let a gentle melody fill the cab as he drove back to the garage. By the time he returned, sunlight had drifted farther across the floor and illuminated a half-finished restoration project under a fluorescent lamp. He climbed out, stretched his tired back, and wiped his brow with a cloth that had seen better days. He thought about the granola bar warming in his jacket pocket and decided to save it for an afternoon snack. The day ahead promised a steady stream of oil changes, brake jobs, and tire rotations, but he felt ready for everyone because he had started it with an act of goodwill. His assistant, Maria, arrived carrying a clipboard filled with work orders and greeted him with a cheerful, "Good morning, boss." He returned her greeting and pointed to the toolbox on the bench where he would need the pliers and sockets set next. She smiled and got to work while he moved to unlock the dusty garage door next to the parts room. He ignored the steady tick of the old wall clock and instead focused on the satisfying scrape of metal against metal as he opened locked drawers. Each tool he touched carried memories of past challenges overcome and cars rescued from certain breakdown. He felt the familiar comfort of routine mixed with a spark of unexpected joy from yesterday's free repair. With a deep breath and a final look around the quiet shop, he decided it was going to be a very good day. The morning sun climbed higher as the steady rhythm of cars and trucks echoed through the small town streets. Mr. Lee pressed his shoulder against the old garage door to close it with a heavy thud before pulling a dust cloth from his shop jacket. He wiped oil marks from the windshield of a bright yellow hatchback, waiting for a fresh set of spark plugs. A teenager named Carla leaned against the car hood, tapping her phone nervously as she waited for her first driving lesson. He greeted her with a warm nod and motioned for her to come inside where he could work while she sat out of the midday sun. As he loosened the spark plugs one by one, he explained in simple words how electricity travels through wires to ignite the engine. Carla listened carefully and asked why an engine needed clean fuel and fresh air filters to run smoothly. He showed her how to check tire pressure using a gauge and how to add air safely without overfilling. She practiced holding the gauge and pressed the lever with a steady hand as he offered encouraging smiles. After a few tries, she beamed with pride, showing she had learned something new in just minutes. While the hatchback's engine purred like a small kitten, a board member from the local charity arrived in a dusty brown station wagon. She introduced herself as Ms. Nguyen and asked if he had time to inspect a broken brake light and a loose muffler. He agreed and walked over, wiping his hands on a rag before kneeling beside the back wheel. He tightened a loose bolt and replaced a cracked tail light lens with a clear new piece from his spare parts shelf. Ms. Nguyen thanked him and offered payment, but he shook his head and said, "Put it toward feeding families this winter." She left with a caring smile and a wave, already on her way to drop off food donations at the community center. Soon after, the bell above the garage door jingled to announce his friend Mark, who stopped by with a pizza box for lunch. They ate under the shade of a large oak tree next to the garage, talking about baseball scores and summer plans. Mr. Lee explained how he felt happiest when he could use his wrench to help someone rather than earn a quick profit. Mark laughed and said he wished he had half as much skill with a car engine as Mr. Lee did. They tossed back slices of hot pepperoni pizza and compared which soda tasted best with salty cheese. Back inside, Mr. Lee returned to his tasks, checking brake pads on an SUV and aligning the wheels on a delivery van. He moved through each job with calm efficiency, treating every vehicle as if it belonged to a dear friend in need. Maria brought in cold water and offered a thumbs up when she saw how smoothly he worked. By mid-afternoon, the garage walls were streaked with grease and dust from constant motion. Yet no one complained because customers knew they could trust Mr. Lee to be honest and fair. This reputation grew in small conversations at the grocery store and in quiet remarks over coffee at the diner. When people heard about his free repair for Mrs. Thompson, they simply smiled and sometimes dropped by to say hello. He greeted each visitor with respect, offering water or coffee and listening to their stories as he tightened nuts and bolts. A soft breeze carried the scent of blooming flowers inside as a florist delivery van rolled in for an oil change. He worked quickly on that van too, making sure the trays of lilies and daisies would arrive fresh in town. When he finished for the day, he closed the service bay doors and organized all the tools by size and type. He cleaned every surface, knowing that a tidy workshop made it easier to solve tomorrow's problems. He tallied the day's jobs on a scrap of paper, noting which ones still needed follow-up parts orders. Then he locked the main garage doors and walked toward the small office at the back. Inside, he turned on a desk lamp and reviewed his notes by its warm yellow glow. He scribbled a reminder to call a parts supplier and to renew the shop's insurance before next month. As dusk settled and the sky turned pink and orange, he changed into clean clothes in the side room. He packed his worn jacket in a corner of the office and locked the door behind him. With one last glance at the silent machinery, he stepped outside to head home with a quiet sense of satisfaction. The next morning dawned with soft light that broke through gray clouds and promised a pleasant day ahead. Mr. Lee arrived at the garage before the sun had fully risen and unlocked the front gates with a clank of metal on metal. As he pulled open the bay doors, he noticed a long black limousine idling in front, its glossy paint glinting even under the soft sky. His heart skipped a beat because he had never seen such a fancy vehicle at his humble roadside shop. He set down his coffee mug on a small bench by the entrance and approached the limo with curious steps. The driver, dressed in a sharp black suit and a crisp white shirt, stepped out and nodded politely to Mr. Lee. "Good morning," the driver said in a calm voice as he handed over a neatly folded business card. Mr. Lee opened the card and read the name Ellis Enterprises, printed in gold letters beneath a simple rising sun logo. Just then, a tall woman in a dark skirt suit emerged from the passenger door, her hair pinned back and a warm smile on her face. She introduced herself as Ms. Ellis and explained that she represented a gentleman who wished to thank Mr. Lee personally. Mr. Lee blinked in surprise and wiped a drop of coffee off his mug before replying politely. Ms. Ellis continued, saying that an invitation had been sent in gratitude for the kindness he had shown to Mrs. Thompson. He frowned in confusion and said he did not know of any invitation other than the one in his heart to help others. The driver offered to bring a small gift into the shop if he would kindly accept on behalf of his services. Mr. Lee stepped aside to let the chauffeur open the limousine door and reveal its cargo. From within, a polished wooden box was carefully removed and placed on a red velvet pillow by the back seat. As the box settled on a seat inside the garage, the lid opened automatically to reveal a set of finely crafted wrenches engraved with his name. Each tool shone like silver in the morning light and looked far more elegant than the old set he had used for years. Ms. Ellis explained that the owner of the limousine wanted him to know how much his generosity meant to the community. He listened with honest surprise as she told him how Mrs. Thompson's car, once fixed, had carried life-saving medical supplies. The wealthy man had heard how the free repair allowed the supplies to reach a rural clinic just in time. He felt moved by this story and resolved to repay Mr. Lee's kindness in a meaningful way. Then Ms. Ellis smiled and said that the engraved wrenches were only the first token of thanks he would receive. Mr. Lee felt tears gather in his eyes as he recalled Mrs. Thompson's grateful face. He managed to say, "Thank you, but I do not deserve such a gift for doing what anyone should." Ms. Ellis nodded and said the world will be better if more people thought like him. The driver handed him a sealed letter with an ornate ribbon and asked him to read it when he felt at peace. He took the letter carefully and tucked it into his work jacket as a feeling of joy warmed his chest. Ms. Ellis offered to introduce him to the benefactor later if he wished, but he shook his head gently. He said he would rather remain behind the scenes and let the kindness speak for itself. The limousine's engine rumbled softly as the driver closed the door and prepared to depart. Mr. Lee waved until the vehicle rolled slowly down the street and disappeared around a corner. Then he set down his empty coffee mug on a nearby workbench and drew in a deep breath of garage air. Maria hurried over, her eyes widening when she saw the fancy wrenches shining on the bench. He told her to hold off while he unfolded the letter and glanced at the smooth paper. Maria leaned in and whispered, "What is it?" as he whispered back that it was important and personal. She nodded and waited patiently while he finished scanning the letter quickly. A broad smile spread across his face, lighting up his features in a bright glow. He blinked away a single tear and said softly, "It seems our little shop made a big difference." Maria clapped her hands and said they should celebrate with a special lunch to honor the moment. After Maria brought him a fresh cup of coffee, Mr. Lee settled at a small desk in the back office to read the letter more carefully. The letter began with warm greetings from the hospital director, whose staff had received the medical supplies in time because of Mrs. Thompson's car. It went on to thank him personally for the kindness and skill that had turned a broken-down automobile into a lifeline for hundreds of patients. The letter also invited him to join a community showcase event where local heroes would share their stories. It promised that he would not be asked to speak on stage unless he truly wanted to, because the main goal was to honor his humble service. Mr. Lee felt his heart beat faster as he read every line with growing wonder and pride. He folded the letter carefully and placed it in a drawer next to a faded photo of his late father standing beside a rusty old pickup. He thought back on the early days when he had learned to turn a wrench under his father's patient guidance in a small backyard shed. He closed his eyes and remembered the hard work and long hours that built both the garage and his own sense of purpose. When he opened his eyes again, he saw Maria peeking in with a hopeful look and excitement in her smile. He asked her to come in and share the invitation details, watching her face light up with delight. She said it would be an honor to serve at the showcase event, and he agreed she could accompany him as his guest. Then he locked his office door to protect the letter and turned back toward the main garage area. He picked up the engraved wrenches and ran his hand along the smooth metal handles. The weight of each tool felt perfectly balanced in his palm, as if custom-made for his grip. He set them on a clean work table where other mechanics could admire them. As the day went on, word reached customers about the limo, the engraved tools, and the special letter. People whispered among themselves, offering congratulations and pats on the back whenever they came for service. Each kind gesture reminded him that true reward came from doing the right thing, no matter how small. By late afternoon, Mr. Lee finished his final repair and locked the last car door under the sunset's glow. He and Maria closed the garage doors and walked out together into the evening breeze. He thanked her for her help all day and said none of this would have happened without her steady support. She smiled and said she was proud to work beside someone who valued kindness above all else. They paused to admire the soft glow of street lamps lighting the empty road back to Mr. Lee's modest home. When he arrived, he found a bowl of vegetable soup and warm bread waiting on the kitchen table. His wife greeted him with a hug, relieved that he was safe and smiling despite the long day. He shared the events of the day, describing the limousine, the wrenches, and the letter in his pocket. She listened with bright eyes and whispered that she had always known he had a good heart. He pulled the letter from his jacket and handed it to her so she could read by lamplight. She read every line, her eyes shining, then looked up with pride reflecting in her own gentle smile. They sat down to eat the soup, talking softly about how kindness can travel far beyond one single act. He told her he hoped the community event would inspire more people to help each other in small ways. She squeezed his hand and said she would be by his side whenever he needed to share his story. After dinner, they washed the dishes and dried them in comfortable silence while a soft radio played jazz. Later that night, Mr. Lee lay in bed and held his family close, feeling grateful for a life built on service and simple joys. He vowed to continue fixing cars and helping neighbors without expecting anything in return. As he drifted towards sleep, he thought of Mrs. Thompson's happy face and the ripple effect of one free repair. It struck him that kindness was like a spring rain nurturing the seeds of goodwill in every heart you touch. With that thought, he closed his eyes and allowed himself to dream of tomorrow's sunrise and the new stories he would help write. And in that peaceful moment, he smiled, knowing that true reward often arrives when you least expect it. On the crisp morning of the local Heroes Showcase, Mr. Lee woke well before sunrise and laced up his scuffed leatherwork boots before gathering his folded oil-stained cloth, a set of engraved wrenches gleaming in the early light, and a small red wooden crate for display at the community center. Maria arrived soon after, wearing a bright yellow safety vest over her blue blouse and carrying a long white banner painted in bold red letters that fluttered gently in the breeze with the words, "Local Heroes." Together they secured the wooden crate and the lightweight foldable workbench onto a flatbed trailer hitched to Mr. Lee's old pickup truck, while volunteers carried folding chairs and extra tables under the shade of nearby oak trees. As they drove slowly through the quiet streets lined with blooming dogwood trees, neighbors waved from their front porches and called out words of encouragement that echoed like a hometown cheer. When they reached the community center courtyard, they found a large white tent already set up with colorful streamers, beneath which rows of folding tables held displays honoring teachers, firefighters, nurses, and other local heroes. Mr. Lee and Maria unhooked the trailer and carefully unloaded the shining engraved wrenches, lining each one on a plush velvet cloth so the silver engraving of his name caught the morning light. Behind the wrenches, they set up the small wooden workbench with its open toolbox full of polished sockets, pliers, and screwdrivers, and propped a neatly hand-lettered sign reading "Tools of Kindness," a story of one free repair. A steady stream of visitors began to approach, schoolchildren in bright jackets, families with toddlers in strollers, and elderly neighbors leaning on canes, all intrigued by the gleaming tools. Mr. Lee greeted each guest with a warm smile and explained in clear, simple words how a loose spark plug wire in an old sedan had been fixed at no charge, allowing a neighbor's car to carry critical medicine to a rural clinic in time. Maria handed out crisp flyers featuring a photo of Mrs. Thompson beside her repaired blue sedan, seeds for her spring garden spilling from a wicker basket, and a brief summary of the free repair that sparked this chain of goodwill. The crowd nodded in respect, and a mother bent down to whisper in her son's ear, reminding him that helping others without expecting reward was a true mark of kindness. Nearby, the mayor stepped to the microphone under the tent, her dark suit jacket catching the sunlight as she welcomed everyone to the local Heroes Showcase with genuine warmth in her voice. She praised volunteers, teachers, police officers, and everyday citizens whose small acts of service built a stronger, kinder community, comparing kindness to the engine that drives a well-tuned car. When she introduced Mr. Lee as the feature hero, he stepped forward with a shy nod, clutching his cap in his hands while the audience broke into gentle applause. His heart pounded as he approached the microphone, and he paused to look out at the sea of familiar faces, friends, neighbors, and strangers who believed in his simple act of service. In a steady, clear voice, he began telling the story of Mrs. Thompson's stalled sedan, the loose spark plug wire, and how that one free repair carried life-saving supplies down winding country roads. The audience listened intently, many wiping away tears as they imagined the old blue cart traveling through rain-soaked fields to deliver medicine that saved lives at the rural clinic. When he finished speaking, the applause swelled louder than he expected, lasting in waves that felt like gentle pats on the back from the whole town. Children dashed forward bearing hand-drawn thank you cards, and Mr. Lee bent to accept each one, marveling at the colorful pictures of wrenches, cars, and smiling neighbors. Afterward, Neighbors came up to share their own stories of helping elderly friends, rescuing stranded pets, and volunteering at the food bank, inspired by the idea that anyone could make a difference. A group of local students displayed hand-painted posters offering free car safety checks for senior citizens, and Mr. Lee promised to help them run a weekend clinic at his garage. He watched the students beam with pride as they described how they would test tire pressure, check oil levels, and ensure lights and brakes worked properly for drivers who could not afford repairs. Volunteers helped pack extra wrenches, oil cans, and safety gloves into reusable tote bags for distribution at the upcoming clinic, demonstrating how one act of kindness can spark many more. As the sun climbed higher, guests began to drift toward other displays honoring veterans, teachers, and nonprofit organizers, while Mr. Lee and Maria prepared to pack up their station. Maria handed Mr. Lee a cold bottled water and a ham and cheese sandwich wrapped in wax paper that tasted especially good after the morning's excitement. They carefully folded up the Tools of Kindness banner, rolled the workbench onto the trailer, and stacked the engraved wrenches back into their velvet-lined case. A local news reporter approached with a camera crew, requesting a brief interview for the evening broadcast, and Mr. Lee agreed, speaking again about how kindness is a tool available to everyone. The reporter thanked him, promising to share the story so that more towns would consider celebrating everyday heroes in similar ways. Once the final boxes were loaded, Mr. Lee and Maria waved goodbye to the remaining volunteers and climbed into the pickup, feeling the gentle breeze of a job well done. The drive back to the garage was peaceful, and the air carried the scent of freshly cut grass and bright spring blossoms from the community garden. When they returned, they unloaded the engraved wrenches and tools, placing each item carefully back on the workbench and in the toolbox where it belonged. Mr. Lee cleaned and oiled the other tools that had been used during setup, wiping away dust and dirt so the garage would be tidy for the next day's repairs. He updated his schedule board with notes about the upcoming weekend clinic and circled the date in bold red marker to ensure no one forgot. Maria turned off the overhead lights, locked the display case, and tucked the velvet-lined wrench case into a secure corner of the shop. He closed the heavy garage doors with a firm push and double-checked the locks before heading into the small office at the back. Inside, he placed leftover banners and flyers in a neat stack, wrote a short thank you note to the student volunteers, and promised pizza and soda for their next planning meeting. He felt tired but deeply satisfied, knowing that today's work had inspired others to serve, learn, and care for each other in small but meaningful ways. That evening at home, he sat by the window with his wife, showing her photos of the crowded tent and pointing out smiling neighbors gathered around his display. They talked late into the night about future events, ideas for new volunteer projects, and ways to spread kindness beyond their town to nearby communities. As he finally drifted off to sleep, Mr. Lee dreamed of wrenches glinting under the sun and a world where every small act of goodwill could shine as brightly as a polished tool on a velvet cloth. The following Saturday dawned bright and warm with a gentle breeze that carried the scent of blooming lilacs across the garage yard as Mr. Lee and Maria unlocked the doors to prepare for the first free safety clinic for senior drivers. They arranged folding chairs under a pop-up canopy beside his old pickup truck and placed a large banner reading Senior Safety Clinic across the top in clear red letters that caught the morning light. A small table stood at the entrance holding clipboards with sign-up sheets, pins tied to cords, and printed checklists covering tire pressure, oil level, brake function, and headlight adjustment. By mid-morning, several silver-haired drivers arrived in a steady stream, each greeted by Maria's friendly smile and guided to sit down for a brief intake interview before inspection. Mr. Lee demonstrated how to use a pressure gauge to check each tire's PSI, explaining why proper inflation helps maintain steering control and improves fuel efficiency on long drives. Next, he showed how to test brake fluid levels safely, pointing out the importance of clear fluid free from dark sediment that could reduce braking power in emergencies. Senior drivers watched attentively, nodding as they learned to open their hood safely and locate the dipstick for checking engine oil without spilling drops onto their clothes. Maria moved between each attendee, offering bottled water and brandishing a gentle reminder to wear sunglasses or hats when working near bright metal surfaces. He inspected headlights, adjusting aim and cleaning lenses until each beam projected a clear, even pattern that would improve nighttime visibility on unfamiliar roads. Many drivers expressed relief as they discovered minor issues, like low coolant levels or a loose battery terminal, which Mr. Lee fixed within moments at no cost. He used a clean rag to wipe battery posts, tighten connections, and refilled coolant reservoirs with a mix of antifreeze and water to keep engines running cool. Mrs. Thompson arrived in her blue sedan, now as reliable as ever, and offered free-baked cookies to participants as a sweet gesture of gratitude. Mr. Lee served cookies on a plate and reminded everyone to store spare spark plug wires and basic tools in their trunk for unexpected breakdowns. A local health nurse came by to offer hearing and blood pressure screenings under a small tent nearby, adding another layer of care for older community members. The gentle hum of lawnmowers from a nearby yard mingled with voices sharing stories of cross-country trips in older cars that had never been serviced properly. By lunchtime, the parking lot was full of friendly conversations, laughter, and the sound of tools clicking gently as small repairs were completed on the spot. Mr. Lee paused to enjoy a simple cheese sandwich from Maria while watching a neighbor named Carl learn how to check his brake pads for wear. Carl leaned over the wheel hub, observing the thin brake lining and promising to have new pads installed before winter's first snowfall. Meanwhile, Mr. Lee recalibrated tire alignment for another senior driver whose steering had pulled slightly to the right, explaining how misalignment can cause uneven tire wear. Each demonstration felt like a lesson in self-reliance, empowering drivers to handle small maintenance tasks without waiting for emergencies or costly service calls. At one point, a cheerful volunteer handed out branded caps and keychain LED flashlights to drivers who completed every station with enthusiasm and safe practice. Mr. Lee felt a deep sense of accomplishment as he watched winter residents, who once hesitated under car hoods, now confidently checking fluid levels and tightening loose bolts. Maria coordinated the flow of attendees, ensuring no one waited too long and that every driver received clear, step-by-step instructions printed on durable laminated sheets. A local cameraman arrived to capture the event for the community newsletter, filming short interviews with drivers praising the helpfulness and patience of the free clinic team. As the afternoon sun dipped lower, the last group of participants finished their checks and lined up to shake Mr. Lee's hand and express heartfelt thanks. They handed him small gifts, a jar of homemade jam, a knitted scarf, and a photograph of Mrs. Thompson's restored sedan parked amid wildflowers. He accepted each token graciously, tucking the scarf into his toolbox and pinning the photograph above the bench where he kept sentimental mementos. Volunteers folded up chairs and dismantled tents, while Maria gathered leftover water bottles and small flags printed with drive-safe slogans. Mr. Lee loaded his tools into his pickup and wiped them clean with an oil-slightly scented red cloth before placing them back onto the well-organized tool rack. The smile on his face showed he had found more than just professional satisfaction. He had built trust, friendships, and a stronger bond with his neighbors. Before locking the doors, he updated his logbook with the day's activities, noting repair details and names of drivers who might need follow-up service. He crossed off the Senior Safety Clinic event, planning to recommend it as an annual tradition that could help keep more people safe on the road. Maria switched off the shop lights and double-checked the locks, then joined him for a quiet moment by the back entrance before heading home. They leaned against the closed garage doors, sipping sweet iced tea and watching the sky turn shades of pink and purple as dusk approached. Mr. Lee reflected on how a single free repair had blossomed into an entire movement of shared kindness and practical support across generations. Maria smiled and asked what he would do next, prompting him to suggest they reach out to youth groups for a basic mechanic workshop next summer. With a gentle breeze stirring tree branches overhead, they agreed that teaching young drivers about car care could prevent bigger problems down the road. The streetlights flickered on, and Mr. Lee clicked the lock one final time, securing a garage that had become more than a workplace. It was a center of community care. As they walked away, side by side, he felt a satisfying warmth replacing the day's dust on his skin, knowing he had used his skills to serve others selflessly. And in that quiet evening glow, he dreamed of future clinics, kindly acts, and the powerful ripple effect sparked by one simple act of generosity. Early the next morning, Mr. Lee rose before dawn once again, his mind racing with ideas for a summer youth mechanics workshop that would empower local teens to learn essential skills and foster community responsibility. He sat at the small oak desk inside the garage office, drafting an outline with bullet points that included safety demonstrations, hands-on tool use, guest speakers from the technical college, and a community service project for all participants. Maria arrived carrying a stack of brightly colored promotional flyers printed on glossy paper, each adorned with cheerful illustrations of wrenches, gears, and smiling faces, ready to distribute at the weekly town hall meeting later that afternoon. They packed a large rolling whiteboard, markers in various colors, and a set of child-sized safety goggles into the back of the pickup truck for the gathering at the community center. As they arrived at the town hall, friendly faces greeted them, many neighbors waving as they walked past tables full of announcements for local events, bake sales, and youth sports leagues. Mr. Lee quickly found the event coordinator and set up a neatly arranged table displaying toolkits, protective gloves, and laminated printed materials outlining the workshop schedule. By mid-morning, dozens of interested students and their parents had gathered around, asking questions about age requirements, workshop duration, and potential career paths in automotive technology. He explained in clear, simple terms that the workshop would run for 6 weeks, meeting every Saturday morning, offering both theoretical lessons and supervised practical activities under expert guidance. Maria distributed sign-up sheets and gently encouraged shy students to write down their names and favorite types of vehicles, explaining that personalized projects would help keep them engaged and motivated. Nearby, volunteers from the high school automotive club set up a display of restored vintage parts, from carburetors to spark plugs, demonstrating how proper maintenance preserves engine performance. Mr. Lee moved among the crowd, answering questions about tools and safety, using simple analogies like comparing a torque wrench to a lid on a jar that needs just the right twist to seal properly. Parents nodded appreciatively, impressed by his ability to break down complex mechanical concepts into relatable everyday examples that even young children could understand. A local TV reporter arrived to film a short segment for the evening news, capturing footage of Mr. Lee and Maria handing out flyers while explaining the free youth program to curious onlookers. When a reporter asked why he was dedicating his time and resources to this initiative, he smiled and said he wanted to share the joy of learning and build a future generation that could care for their own vehicles. Around noon, a group of retired mechanics and engineers joined the table to volunteer as mentors, each wearing a name badge and carrying a notebook filled with plans for teaching engine diagnostics and tool safety. They chatted animatedly about creating lesson plans, scheduling guest speakers, and designing certificates of achievement for students who completed each module successfully. Mr. Lee took careful notes in his well-worn journal, listing the names of volunteers, potential sponsors, donated tool sets, and timelines for ordering supplies and reserving classroom space. Maria called a quick break, offering bottled water and homemade granola bars to volunteers and families, reminding everyone to stay hydrated in the warm spring sunshine. After the break, they walked through the town square, handing out invitations to local businesses, hoping to secure sponsorships for safety gear, lunch donations, and prizes for student projects. A bakery owner pledged to donate pastries each Saturday, while a hardware store offered discounted tools for participants, sending a representative to coordinate a sponsored tool library. Energized by the community support, Mr. Lee and Maria returned to the garage full of renewed excitement. Unloading boxes of donated tool sets and verifying each kit contained a wrench set, socket set, and safety gloves. He carefully inspected every donated tool for quality and safety, wiping each handle with a clean rag and ensuring all moving parts operated smoothly before storing them in label bins. Maria updated the workshop website with new details, including volunteer profiles, workshop curriculum, and a downloadable packing list for students to prepare for their first session. Later that afternoon, they met with the local middle school principal to secure classroom space for theoretical lessons and to coordinate bus transportation for students without cars. The principal expressed gratitude and promised to promote the workshop during school assemblies, offering extra credit for participants who completed a community safety project by the program's end. Mr. Lee felt pride swell in his chest as he realized the workshop had grown from a simple idea into a fully supported community endeavor with educational and practical benefits. That evening, he returned home and shared the workshop's progress with his family over supper, showing photographs of volunteers, tool sets, and enthusiastic students captured on his phone. His children listened eagerly and offered to help design a workshop logo with bright colors and a catchy motto to inspire participants and build team spirit. Together, they sketched ideas that combined imagery of gears, the sun rising over a horizon, and the name Future Gearheads to symbolize learning and growth in mechanical knowledge. With a final sip of coffee, Mr. Lee drafted an email to their print shop, requesting promotional posters and magnetized stickers to spread the word around town. As he typed, he reflected on how this workshop had built upon the goodwill generated by that one free repair for Mrs. Thompson and the ripple effect it had sparked. The email finished with a thank you note to the print shop owner, reminding him of the positive impact of local support for community learning programs. Before bed, Mr. Lee checked his calendar, noting the first workshop date, volunteer orientations, and the deadlines for ordering safety gear and printing certificates. He placed a hand on his engraved wrench set displayed in the living room, feeling the smooth metal beneath his palm and remembering the grateful smile of Mrs. Thompson when her car first roared back to life. Maria sent him a text confirming the arrival of toolkits, and thanking him for trusting her to coordinate volunteers and sponsors so effectively. He replied that none of this would have been possible without her organizational skills and unwavering support, then set his phone aside with contentment. As he drifted off to sleep, he imagined hearing hammers tapping, wrenches clicking, and laughter echoing through the garage as future gearheads learned new skills. His dreams were filled with bright workshop benches, lined with gleaming tools and student projects in various stages of completion under bright fluorescent lights. In that peaceful sleep, he felt the quiet satisfaction that comes from turning a simple act of kindness into a broader movement of education and empowerment. And when dawn arrived again, Mr. Lee would awaken with fresh enthusiasm, ready to guide another generation into the world of mechanics, community service, and compassionate leadership. Many months after that first bright morning when he fixed Mrs. Thompson's car for free, Mr. Lee stood in his garage doorway and watched the soft sunrise light dance across rows of polished engines waiting patiently for service, feeling a gentle pride swell in his chest. Each engine shone like a mirror under the glow of overhead neon lights and reminded him of the moment when a simple act of kindness had grown into a ripple of goodwill, reminding him of hope and friendship across every mile. Now the walls of his workshop were filled with certificates of appreciation, photographs of community events, and newspaper clippings that told the story of how a humble repair had saved lives, each story reminding him of the power of compassion. Neighbors brought their cars for routine checkups with smiles and waves, sharing quick stories about distant relatives who lived far away, yet heard the mechanic's generous spirit. And he smiled as he thought of distant friends cheering him on. Maria greeted each visitor with a friendly hello and handed out small flyers that showed upcoming community clinics, youth workshops, and volunteer car safety days, each flyer carrying promise of shared learning and support. The engraved wrenches that had arrived in the wooden box now sat on a glass shelf, shining under a spotlight and labeled Tools of Kindness in neat black lettering, their smooth surfaces echoing every thank you ever offered. New apprentices visited the garage every morning to learn basic maintenance tasks like checking tire pressure, changing oil filters, and tightening loose hoses, all under Mr. Lee's patient guidance, enjoying the lively chatter of apprentices eager to learn. He taught them how to use each tool properly, explaining in simple words how a wrench, socket, or screwdriver could become an instrument of care rather than mere metal and steel, ensuring each word remained clear and simple for young minds. His son and daughters sometimes joined the apprentices, helping to organize tools and demonstrating to younger kids how to read gauges on old vehicles with analog dials, while he guided them gently with the ease of practiced patience. Local businesses now sponsored free car safety days, providing refreshments, tool donations, and small prizes for participants who completed every station successfully, and he felt heartened by every small gift. Every Friday afternoon, the garage closed early so that Mr. Lee and his team of volunteers could visit senior centers, offering free tire rotations, brake inspections, and light repairs at no cost. Before each visit, they packed a van with tools, supplies, and spare parts, along with water bottles and homemade cookies baked by Mrs. Thompson herself. The smiles on the seniors' faces when they saw the friendly team arrive in matching shirts brightened the long hallways of the care homes. They greeted the visitors with stories of cross-country trips in their youth, tales of first learning to drive, and memories of road trips that defined their families. In return, Mr. Lee and the apprentices worked steadily under gentle lights, tightening loose bolts, cleaning fuel injectors, and testing battery health with handheld meters. Each completed repair reminded everyone present that community care was not just a phrase, but a practice that kept people safe and connected. Newspapers wrote feature stories about the free clinics, the youth workshops named Future Gearheads, and the unlikely hero who turned his garage into a beacon of hope. Even the local college offered to partner with Mr. Lee to provide advanced training sessions for apprentices who showed special talent and dedication. He accepted the offer and arranged for guest instructors to travel to his shop on select days, teaching engine diagnostics and computerized fuel system mapping. Soon, the workshop became a small learning center filled with students who asked eager questions about spark plugs, carburetors, and the chemistry of coolant mixtures. Year after year, the events grew, and Mr. Lee realized that a single free repair had evolved into a legacy of education, compassion, and practical support for his entire community. He often thought back to the moment he first tightened the spark plug wire under Mrs. Thompson's hood and smiled at how far that moment had carried him. Late autumn arrived, bringing crisp air and red and gold leaves swirling around the garage entrance as a new group of apprentices prepared for the winter workshop series. He added lessons on winter car care, checking antifreeze levels, testing heater function, and ensuring defroster vents were clear of dust and debris. Parents and apprentices gathered around a demonstration truck while he explained how proper use of wiper blades and windshield washer fluid could improve visibility on snowy mornings. The apprentices practiced changing wiper blades, filling washer fluid reservoirs, and wiping windshields clean, each action reinforcing the lesson and building confidence. Meanwhile, Maria prepared new certificates of achievement embossed with the phrase Certified Kindness Mechanic to award to seniors, apprentices, and volunteers alike. When the first winter workshop concluded, a small ceremony was held at the garage, complete with hot cocoa, cookies, and enthusiastic applause for every graduate. Each new graduate pinned a small badge on their coat and received a set of brightly colored gloves embroidered with the workshop's name, symbolizing their commitment to helping others. As word spread, nearby towns began contacting Mr. Lee to learn how to set up similar community workshops and free clinics under their own local heroes. He shared his knowledge freely, sending workshop outlines, promotional materials, and tool checklists so others could follow his model of kindness in action. Soon small clusters of people across the county were hosting safety days, youth programs, and senior clinics with the same spirit that had ignited in his garage. Years later, on a calm summer morning, Mr. Lee stood outside the community center at the annual Heroes Showcase and watched his apprentices from his first class displayed restored engines and safety posters. Their confidence and skill filled him with pride, and he realized that teaching young people had been one of the most rewarding acts of service he could offer. He listened to the mayor's speech praising the program's impact on road safety and community cohesion, and he felt tears of joy well up in his eyes. After the ceremony, he walked among the displays, listening to stories of families whose lives had been saved by timely repairs and safety checks performed at free clinics. One family told how a loose brake line had been caught just in time, preventing a serious accident, and another thanked Mr. Lee for teaching their teenager to handle emergencies with calm hands. As the sun dipped low that evening, he returned to his now quiet garage and surveyed the rows of cars waiting for the next day's work, feeling deep satisfaction in his craft. He locked the heavy doors, turned off the lights, and paused to turn the engraved wrenches gently in his hand, remembering how they had arrived as a gift from a grateful stranger. With a peaceful smile, he walked down the driveway toward home under a sky painted with pink and purple streaks, grateful that one free repair had changed countless lives for the better.